Now, of course, just adding the secondary server or the slave server doesn't add a name server record. So when anybody's looking for information relating to this zone, they're still only going to be returned the one name server. So we've got to ensure we add in the additional name server. And remember, when we add in any records now, we'll be adding them to our master server. That's the read-write copy. But we also have to remember now, and it becomes critical, that we remember to increment the serial number. So let's look at finalizing and testing our solution. So working on our read-write copy, so working on the Ubuntu master server, we're going to go through and edit db.example. So as we go through, we've got a refresh of 8 hours. So this means that without any intervention, we're going to have to wait 8 hours for the slave to replicate. We're also going to increment our serial number. We're going to put it in 30. And it's the first change today. It's the 30th of November, and it's the first change. We're going to add in a new record, so a name server record, and we're going to have this as slave.example.com. Now remember, we only put our canonical names, our full names are on this side. We never use our alias records. So even though that I might add in an alias, so name server 2, and then we can have our internet and CNAME, and we're going to have this pointing through to slave.example.com. But this will be the correct record that we're using. So this is going to be the address record. We can put then the aliases in because then it becomes simple ways that I can then go through, don't have to think of the names so much. When I go through then to my main address records, we're going to put then a record for slave and then internet and address record. And then the IP address is going to be 10.0.2.15. Again, we can put our TXT record. And again, we make sure we're pointing to the correct host, internet record, and text, and DNS secondary, for example. So we added in a name server record, and again we started that with a space, so that's then going to refer to the previous record. Again, the previous record is blank, so then that just follows through to the @ record, and then the @ record was reading from example.com. As we've carried on down, we then added in a alias, so ns2, pointing to slave.example.com. We added in the address record for slave.master.com, pointing to the correct IP address, and we've added in our text record. We can then go through and save this. On here, we can then go through and run our RNDC and reload example.com. Now we also really need to go through and make similar changes through into our 10.0.2 file. So you can see I've incremented the serial number, that's now pointing to the 30th. We've got our two name server records pointing to master and slave, and I've added in a PTR record with the entry of 15 having the value of slave.example.com. If we go through and save this, and then again we can go through and reload, and this is going to be 2.0.10, in-addr.arpa. So that's reread that in. We either need to wait the 8 hours for the synchronization, or we can force it to resynchronize. So if we then use the RNDC and retransfer example.com, and then the reverse lookup, so 2.0.10.in-addr.arpa, we should have the correct information through. Again, if we go through and look at our logs, we can see then we've transferred with correct serial numbers. I'm going to go back to my Ubuntu machine because that's where I have my scripts that I can use to check this. So if I use the Perl script dns-soa and then example.com, we can see then that we've read both serial numbers and they are the same. We can go through and start checking some of our records so we know they're going to be correct now. But if I go through and use dig -type name server for example.com, we can see then that we're getting both master and slave coming back. So hopefully we've got a good idea now of how we can start to configure our master and slave servers within DNS. Sure, we're using different distributions. You're welcome to use the same distributions, but it's just giving you experience of different distribution setups. Now, of course, as we mentioned, we haven't set up any security, and we're certainly going to need the security. But for the moment, let's just jump back into the slides so we can tidy up this module.